What if the answers you've been searching for were spoken 2,000 years ago, waiting for you in the red letters? The red letters in the Bible are more than ink on a page. They are Jesus' voice, speaking timeless truths that cut through history and reach into our lives today. Imagine hearing Jesus himself speak directly to you, addressing your deepest questions, fears, and hopes. The red letters invite you to experience this connection. These are words of purpose, peace, and transformation, recorded to bring his voice into your world right now. No matter what you are going through, loss, uncertainty, a desire for purpose, these words have the power to guide, comfort, and renew. In the Bible, the words of Jesus stand apart, printed in red. They have changed lives for centuries, and now they are here for you. Jesus' teachings in the red letters don't just tell us what to do, they show us how to live. They reach beyond cultural, spiritual, and emotional divides, calling every one of us to find love, purpose, and resilience. His words teach us how to love our enemies, forgive those who hurt us, and trust in God's provision, even when life feels uncertain. These teachings offer a way of life that brings strength, joy, and a sense of belonging we all long for. You don't have to wonder what Jesus would say to you today. His words in the red letters hold answers for every part of life, from faith and forgiveness to humility and love. They help us understand what really matters, shaping our actions and guiding our hearts toward a life filled with purpose. When you lean into these words, you may discover a perspective that shifts your view on life, a peace that quiets your soul, and a joy that strengthens you through any trial. As you explore each chapter in this book, let Jesus' words speak to your heart. He spoke them for people just like you, people with doubts, dreams, struggles, and hopes. He still speaks these words, and they are as powerful today as they were when he first said them. Open your heart, listen deeply, and let these words guide you toward a life of love, courage, and grace. Each chapter invites you to hear him, reflect on his wisdom, and respond with a heart ready to live out his teachings. What if the red letters hold the peace, strength, and purpose you've been searching for? Could it be that these ancient words were meant for you right here, right now? What if a single gospel could bring us closer to Jesus' heart, showing us his compassion, wisdom, and powerful call to a transformed life? The Gospel of Matthew begins with a vision of Jesus as both the fulfillment of prophecy and the compassionate teacher who brings God's kingdom to earth. Through this gospel, Jesus invites us to understand what it means to live in alignment with God's heart, challenging conventional ideas of power, justice, and faith. Matthew's account is often known for the Sermon on the Mount, a collection of teachings that covers everything from humility to love for enemies. The words in these red letters aren't simply lessons, they're an invitation to a life of purpose, shaped by values that transcend the ordinary. The Sermon on the Mount calls us to a deeper relationship with God and others, recentering our lives on compassion, humility, and faithfulness. One of the most famous passages in Matthew's Gospel is the Beatitudes, where Jesus describes the unexpected blessings for those who choose his way. From the poor in spirit to the pure in heart, each blessing points to a quality that aligns with God's kingdom. Alongside these blessings, Jesus also teaches us to be like salt and light, preserving what is good and illuminating the world around us with his love. As we explore Matthew's Gospel, let's open our hearts to the words Jesus spoke and consider how they might shape our lives today. Each teaching carries a timeless truth, reminding us that God's kingdom is available to all who are willing to listen, trust, and follow. What if the way to a fulfilled life is hidden in these ancient teachings? Could it be that by listening to Jesus in Matthew's Gospel, we find a path to true peace and purpose? What if the qualities that seem small or weak are the very things that make us strong in God's kingdom? In his first major teaching, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus presents a revolutionary vision for a life lived in alignment with God's kingdom. Beginning with the Beatitudes, Jesus describes a life marked by humility, mercy, purity, and a longing for righteousness. These qualities may appear quiet or even vulnerable, but Jesus calls them blessed. They reveal a strength rooted in God's presence and His values, offering a pathway to true joy and peace. In this section, we'll explore the Beatitudes, each a blessing spoken over those who embody the heart of God's kingdom. Alongside these, Jesus calls His followers to be salt and light in the world, preserving what is good and illuminating the path for others. Through these teachings, He shows us that a life of faith impacts not only our own hearts, but also those around us. Jesus' words remind us that real strength lies in trusting God's way over the world's way. As we study these passages, let's consider how the qualities Jesus blesses in the Beatitudes might shape our own lives, guiding us to live with compassion, humility, and courage. What if the blessings we truly need are hidden in qualities the world often overlooks? Could it be that embracing these blessings allows us to be the salt and light the world needs? What if the key to true happiness is found not in what we gain, but in how we live? In these red letters, Jesus speaks directly to the heart, offering a series of blessings known as the Beatitudes. Each one highlights a quality or condition that brings us closer to God's heart: humility, mercy, purity, a thirst for justice, and more. These blessings challenge us to find strength in gentleness and joy in spiritual poverty. Jesus' words redefine what it means to live a fulfilling life, guiding us to seek values that go beyond material success or recognition. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Each beatitude speaks to a quality that the world often overlooks. Jesus doesn't praise wealth, power, or fame, but instead blesses humility, kindness, and a longing for righteousness. In these teachings, He invites us to a new way of life, one that places value on the things that last, like love, integrity, and peace. By embracing these qualities, we step into a life that reflects God's kingdom and His love for humanity. The Beatitudes call us to live differently, to find joy and meaning not in what we possess, but in who we become. Jesus' words encourage us to lean into these blessings, reminding us that God's kingdom belongs to those who seek Him with open hearts. Through the Beatitudes, we're given a glimpse of what life looks like when we live with humility, compassion, and courage. What if our greatest blessings come from living with an open heart and a spirit of compassion? Could it be that by living out the Beatitudes, we find a deeper joy than the world could ever offer? What if your life was meant to make a lasting impact, bringing hope and clarity to those around you? In these red letters, Jesus calls His followers to be salt of the earth and light of the world. Salt preserves and flavors, and light illumines and guides. Jesus teaches that our lives are meant to bring out the goodness in the world, enhancing and preserving what is pure and true. He encourages us not to hide our faith, but to let it shine, so that others might see God's love through our actions. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Salt and light are simple yet powerful metaphors. Salt enriches flavor and preserves, symbolizing the way our lives can add goodness to the world. Light reveals, guiding others in darkness. Jesus' call to be salt and light reminds us that faith is not meant to be hidden or passive. When we live openly, our kindness, integrity, and love become beacons that reflect God's goodness to those around us. In these red letters, Jesus encourages us to live boldly, letting our faith shine without fear. Being salt and light isn't about drawing attention to ourselves. It's about pointing others to God through our actions. Jesus' words challenge us to consider how our lives influence the world. Are we adding love, grace, and truth to it? By embracing our role as salt and light, we participate in God's mission to bring hope and healing to a world that needs it. What if your faith, lived openly, could help others find their way to God? Could it be that by being salt and light, we fulfill our highest purpose in God's plan? What if the path to true freedom lies in understanding and living out God's intentions for us? In this section, Jesus addresses the law and morality, the principles that shape how we live and relate to God and others. Far from dismissing the Old Testament laws, Jesus deepens their meaning, showing that God's commandments are not just rules to follow, but pathways to a life of integrity, love, and respect. Through these teachings, Jesus invites us to look beyond the surface of the law and explore the spirit behind it. It's not just about what we do, but why we do it. By examining issues like anger, honesty, and forgiveness, Jesus calls us to a higher standard, one that reflects the heart of God. In the red letters, we're reminded that living by God's law isn't a burden, but a guide toward a fulfilled, righteous life. In these next passages, we'll explore how Jesus transforms our understanding of morality, shifting from rigid adherence to an authentic love for God and others. Each teaching challenges us to go deeper, seeking not only obedience, but a transformed heart aligned with God's desires. What if the laws we sometimes resist are actually gifts, meant to lead us into a life of true freedom? Could it be that by embracing the spirit of God's law, we discover a way of living that's more fulfilling than we ever imagined? What if Jesus' purpose wasn't to abolish the law, but to show us its true meaning? In these red letters, Jesus clarifies that he didn't come to do away with God's laws. Rather, he came to fulfill them. By fulfilling the law, Jesus embodies its deepest purpose, calling us to live in alignment with God's heart. He challenges us to go beyond mere rule-following and seek a life that honors the spirit behind each commandment. Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For, truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law, until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Jesus' words here reveal a deep respect for God's commandments. He emphasizes that the law's purpose isn't to restrict us, but to guide us into a life of righteousness. Jesus shows us that true obedience isn't about ticking boxes. It's about cultivating a heart that desires to follow God. His teachings encourage us to strive for a righteousness that isn't just outward, but comes from a place of genuine love and devotion. In these red letters, Jesus invites us to see the law through a new lens. Following God's commands is more than a duty. It's a way to draw closer to Him. Jesus challenges us to pursue a level of righteousness that goes beyond outward appearances, urging us to live with integrity, humility, and a sincere heart. The fulfillment of the law lies in loving God fully and allowing His guidance to shape every part of our lives. What if true obedience is found not in rigid rule-keeping, but in a heart aligned with God's desires? Could it be that by living the spirit of the law, we find the life God always intended for us? What if Jesus' purpose wasn't to abolish the law, but to show us its true meaning? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verses 17 to 20, Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus' words here reveal a deep respect for God's commandments. He emphasizes that the law's purpose isn't to restrict us, but to guide us into a life of righteousness. Jesus shows us that true obedience isn't about ticking boxes. It's about cultivating a heart that desires to follow God. His teachings encourage us to strive for a righteousness that isn't just outward, but comes from a place of genuine love and devotion. In these red letters, Jesus invites us to see the law through a new lens. Following God's commands is more than a duty. It's a way to draw closer to Him. Jesus challenges us to pursue a level of righteousness that goes beyond outward appearances, urging us to live with integrity, humility, and a sincere heart. The fulfillment of the law lies in loving God fully and allowing His guidance to shape every part of our lives. What if true obedience is found not in rigid rule-keeping, but in a heart aligned with God's desires? Could it be that by living the spirit of the law, we find the life God always intended for us? What if true peace begins by addressing the anger within our own hearts? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verses 21 through 26, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary, who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny." In these red letters, Jesus expands the commandment against murder to address the deeper issue, anger in our hearts. His words remind us that it's not only our actions, but also our thoughts and words that can cause harm. Jesus calls us to recognize the power of anger and bitterness and to seek reconciliation before it takes root in our hearts. By forgiving and making peace with others, we free ourselves from the burden of resentment and open ourselves to God's peace. Jesus' teachings here emphasize the importance of inner transformation. Following God isn't just about avoiding outward sins, but also addressing the thoughts and feelings that harm our relationships. Jesus encourages us to make reconciliation a priority even before worship, showing that a heart at peace with others is central to a life with God. These red letters call us to approach others with humility and grace, fostering relationships built on respect and compassion. What if dealing with our anger could bring us closer to a life of peace and connection? Could it be that true freedom lies in letting go of anger and choosing forgiveness? What if guarding our hearts is the key to living a life of true integrity? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verses 27 to 30, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." In these red letters, Jesus doesn't just speak against outward actions. He addresses the intentions of our hearts. He reminds us that sin begins long before any action. It starts with our thoughts and desires. Jesus calls us to a higher standard, encouraging us to guard our hearts and make choices that honor God, ourselves, and others. His words challenge us to pursue purity, recognizing that true integrity flows from within. Jesus' teachings on adultery go beyond the physical act, urging us to look inward. By addressing the root of sin, our thoughts and intentions, he invites us to a life marked by authenticity and respect for God's design. The red letters challenge us to see integrity as a holistic pursuit, one that encompasses not only our actions, but also our minds and hearts. Through his words, Jesus shows us that the path to a fulfilling life begins with self-discipline and a commitment to purity. What if true freedom and fulfillment come from living with a heart that's pure? Could it be that by guarding our hearts, we discover a deeper sense of integrity and peace? What if honoring commitment is one of the deepest expressions of love and faithfulness? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verse 31 and 32, Jesus said, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." In these red letters, Jesus speaks about the sanctity of commitment. He addresses divorce not merely as a legal process, but as a matter of the heart, reminding us that marriage is a covenant meant to reflect God's enduring love. Jesus' words encourage us to consider the depth of our commitments, valuing faithfulness and compassion over convenience. In honoring our promises, we reflect the character of God, who is faithful to us in every season. Jesus' teachings on divorce challenge us to approach relationships with a spirit of integrity and respect. In a world where commitments are often broken, these red letters call us to a higher standard of faithfulness. Jesus highlights the importance of honoring our word, especially in marriage, where the bond mirrors God's unbreakable love. His words invite us to uphold the values of loyalty and care, recognizing that relationships require compassion, humility, and grace. What if true strength and love is found in staying faithful even when times are difficult? Could it be that by honoring our commitments, we experience a deeper understanding of God's love? What if the power of our words lies in their simplicity and truthfulness? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verses 33 through 37, Jesus said, "Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." In these red letters, Jesus speaks to the integrity of our words. He invites us to live with such honesty that oaths become unnecessary. Our simple yes or no should carry enough weight. Jesus' words encourage us to practice transparency and truthfulness, building trust through our actions and promises. When we choose honesty, we reflect God's faithfulness, showing that our words align with our hearts. Jesus' teachings on vows reveal the importance of living with integrity. In a world where words can be empty or exaggerated, he calls us to a life where our commitments and intentions are clear. By letting our yes be yes and our no be no, we honor God and show respect to others. Jesus' words challenge us to let truth guide our relationships, knowing that this simplicity builds a foundation of trust and respect. What if our greatest influence comes from words that are sincere and dependable? Could it be that by speaking with honesty, we build relationships that last? What if the most powerful response to hostility is unexpected love? In the red letters of Matthew 5, verses 38 through 48, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth,' but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, Go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." In these red letters, Jesus teaches a radical approach to relationships and conflict. He challenges us to go beyond natural responses, like retaliation or avoidance, inviting us to love even those who oppose or mistreat us. This love isn't about condoning harm. It's about choosing grace over vengeance. By loving our enemies and praying for those who persecute us, we reflect God's unconditional love, a love that is constant, regardless of who we are or what we've done. Jesus' call to love our enemies is perhaps one of his most difficult teachings, yet it's also one of the most transformative. These red letters ask us to transcend our instincts for self-defense and embrace a life marked by mercy and compassion. Jesus encourages us to treat others not as they deserve, but with the grace we've received from God. In doing so, we mirror the heart of God, whose love reaches out to everyone, both friend and foe. What if loving our enemies is the path to becoming more like God? Could it be that by choosing love over revenge, we open our hearts to true peace? What if the simplest acts of faith, giving, praying, and fasting are the keys to a deeper relationship with God? In this next section of his teachings, Jesus focuses on 3 core practices of faith: giving, prayer, and fasting. These acts of devotion are meant to bring us closer to God, each serving as a pathway to humility, compassion, and spiritual depth. Jesus encourages us to approach these practices with sincerity, not for public praise or recognition, but as genuine expressions of our relationship with God. In the red letters, Jesus reminds us that these acts are not for show, but for shaping our hearts. Giving becomes a way to care for others. Quietly, prayer becomes a conversation with God. Fasting becomes a reminder of our dependence on Him. Through these teachings, Jesus invites us to seek a faith that's real and personal, rooted in love rather than appearances. What if authentic faith is about what we do when only God is watching? Could it be that true connection with God is found in the quiet moments of devotion,